What if I told you a single engineering project just cut a 7-hour, life-threatening mountain, crossing down to 20 minutes flat? No, this isn't some hypothetical future test. It's open and operating right now, carved straight through one of the most geologically dangerous mountain ranges on Earth. But here's the thing that almost no one is talking about. This tunnel wasn't built to break a world record for fun. It was built to fix a problem so big, it split an entire region's economy in two for generations. The Tian Shan Mountains stretch east to west, right through the center of Xinjiang. They don't sit neatly along the region's border. They cut straight down the middle, dividing it like an impenetrable wall. On one side is northern Xinjiang, home to heavy industry, manufacturing, and critical logistics hubs. On the other is southern Xinjiang, rich with oil, gas, minerals, agricultural land, and massive energy reserves. On a map, the gap between these two economic powerhouses looks tiny. On the ground, it was anything but. Listen to this. Before this tunnel existed, anyone crossing the Tian Shan relied on mountain highways that climbed more than 3,000 meters into the sky. The roads twisted through narrow passes, snow-prone valleys, and slopes so unstable, rockfalls were a daily risk. In perfect weather, the trip took 6 to 7 hours. In bad weather, it could take twice that long, or it couldn't happen at all. Winter storms shut the route down regularly. Ice and falling rock made every drive a gamble. Transport costs stayed sky high. Delivery times were completely unpredictable. Economic ties between northern and southern Xinjiang stayed weak even as both sides grew. Even emergency response teams faced delays measured in full hours when lives were on the line. But here's the crazy part. China had already built highways across deserts, plains, and river basins with ease. But the Tian Shan refused to cooperate. Going around the range added hundreds of kilometers to every trip. Building over it created roads that nature controlled, not engineers. So Chinese engineers asked one blunt, game-changing question. If the mountain will not move and a road on top of it can never be safe or reliable, is drilling straight through the only option left? The answer to that question became the Tian Shan Shengli Tunnel. But choosing to build a tunnel here wasn't just a big decision. It was a borderline radical one, because the Tian Shan Mountains aren't just tall. They're unstable, fractured, bitterly cold, and geologically active, still moving to this day. That's where this project stopped being a standard tunnel build and started becoming one of the most difficult engineering jobs ever attempted on the planet. And this wasn't even the first try. Several other routes had tried to shorten the north-south crossing over the years, but none of them fixed the core problem. Xinjiang isn't a small province that can afford to tolerate inefficient, unreliable connections. It's China's largest administrative region, and its entire economy depends on moving bulk resources, oil, gas, coal, agricultural products, and industrial goods. Every extra hour on the road multiplies costs across thousands of trucks every single day. By the early 2000s, China faced a clear, non-negotiable choice. Either accept that the Tian Shan would always split Xinjiang's economy into two separate halves, or commit to a solution that removed the mountains from the equation entirely. That solution meant tunneling, not a short tunnel under a single ridge, not a seasonal pass with a few upgrades. A tunnel long enough to pass beneath the most dangerous section of the range in one uninterrupted stretch. It gets even better. This idea sounded extreme at first, and for good reason. No highway tunnel on Earth had ever been built this long. At this altitude, through geology this unstable, most countries would have walked away right there. China didn't. Instead, planners tied the project to a much bigger vision, building a continuous expressway that could link northern and southern Xinjiang as reliably as any road on flat terrain. That expressway became the GO 711 Urumqi Yuli Expressway, and this tunnel became its most critical and most dangerous component. This road was designed to be a true expressway, not a winding mountain highway that forced drivers to slow down every few kilometers. It needed consistent speeds, year-round reliability, and the capacity to handle heavy freight traffic around the clock. That immediately ruled out high mountain passes and winding surface roads. So planners zeroed in on the most direct line between North and South Xinjiang. That line went straight into the Tian Shan Mountains. At the center of that route sat the most hostile section of the range, peaks rising above 4,000 meters, fault zones stacked on top of each other, and rock layers that alternated between solid granite and crushed water-soaked material that could collapse without a second's warning. Listen closely, because this is where the scale of this project hits home. Construction on the tunnel began in 2020 with a total investment of 46.7 billion yuan, roughly $7 billion US. The project received national-level priority. Specialized design institutes joined the planning phase. Geological surveys mapped fault zones in a level of detail rarely attempted before. Engineers ran simulations not just for the construction process, but for long-term operation through earthquakes, freeze-thaw cycles, and constant heavy traffic loads. The name chosen for the tunnel reflected that unshakable mindset, Tianshan Shengli Tunnel. Shengli means victory, not because the mountain was easy to defeat, but because success here would prove that no terrain inside China was beyond reach. The tunnel stretches 22.13 kilometers from portal to portal. To put that in perspective, that's roughly the distance of driving straight through an entire major city. Except this road runs beneath one of Central Asia's most hostile mountain ranges. But here's the truth. The biggest threat to the Tianshan Shengli Tunnel was never its length. It was the mountain itself. Why does that matter? Because the Tian Shan Mountains are geologically young, and they're still actively forming. This range was created when massive tectonic forces pushed land upward over millions of years, and that process never fully stopped. The rock here is stressed, fractured, and wildly unstable. For tunnel engineers, that's the worst possible combination you can face. The tunnel consists of two parallel tubes, each carrying 2 lanes of traffic. Between them sits a separate service and safety system, built to handle emergencies, ventilation, and routine maintenance. This layout lets traffic flow continuously in both directions, while meeting the strictest safety standards for a tunnel of this length. But length alone isn't what makes this project extreme. At its deepest point, the rock above the tunnel reaches more than 1,100 meters. That's over a full kilometer of mountain, pressing down non-stop on the tunnel structure. In highway tunneling, that level of overburden is incredibly rare. The pressure it creates can deform solid rock, squeeze tunnel walls inward, and trigger sudden catastrophic failures if support systems lag even a little behind excavation. And that's just the start. Then there's the altitude. Construction took place at elevations exceeding 3,000 meters. At that height, oxygen levels drop low enough to slow human performance, reduce engine efficiency, and make even routine work dangerous. Crews worked shorter shifts to stay safe. Machinery required full modifications to operate reliably in the thin air and extreme cold. The tunnel also holds another record that rarely gets mentioned outside engineering circles. It includes some of the deepest vertical access shafts ever built for a highway tunnel, each plunging hundreds of meters straight down from the surface. These shafts weren't a nice to have. They were non-negotiable. Without them, construction time would have stretched far longer and worker safety would have dropped sharply. Along the tunnel route, crews had to cross more than a dozen major fault zones. Some were narrow and dense. Others stretched hundreds of meters wide, filled with crushed rock, loose soil, and running water. In these zones, the mountain behaves less like solid stone and more like wet gravel under massive pressure. Excavate too fast and the tunnel collapses. Install support too slowly and the walls squeeze inward until the structure fails. Engineers had to design the tunnel to move with the mountain, not fight it. Instead of relying on rigid concrete linings alone, they used layered systems that could absorb deformation without breaking. Steel ribs built to flex. Shotcrete layers thickened in real time where pressure rose. Support patterns changed from one section to the next, based on live monitoring data from the mountain itself. It gets even more complicated. Temperature added another layer of constant risk. Outside, winter temperatures dropped well below freezing for months at a time. Inside the mountain, geothermal heat raised rock temperatures to unexpected, sweltering levels. That constant, extreme thermal difference caused non-stop expansion and contraction, ramping up stress on tunnel structures and equipment every single day. And then there's the seismic risk. Xinjiang sits in an active seismic zone. Even minor earthquakes can shift fault zones by centimeters. In a tunnel this long, that small movement can have massive consequences. Engineers reinforce fault crossings heavily, building sections that can flex without losing structural integrity if the mountain moves. Every single meter forward required life or death decision. Do we advance today or reinforce first? Do we speed up or slow down? Do we trust the model or what the sensors are showing us right now? Despite all of that, crews kept moving forward, and the tunnel officially opened to traffic on the 27th of December 2025. But calling the Tian Shan Shangli Tunnel just a world record invites a fair question. How does it actually stack up against the biggest tunnels ever built elsewhere on the planet? Let's break it down, starting with Norway. The El Ardal Tunnel is often mentioned first in these conversations. At just over 24 kilometers, it remains the longest road tunnel on Earth by raw length. But context matters. The El Ardal Tunnel runs at low altitude through relatively stable rock with mild climate conditions compared to Xinjiang. It was completed in 2000 at a time when geological risk mapping and construction pressure were far lower than what engineers faced in the Tian Shan. Length alone doesn't tell the full story. Then there's Switzerland's Gotthard Base Tunnel. At 57 kilometers, it's the longest rail tunnel on Earth. It passes deep beneath the Alps and took nearly 2 decades to complete. Its scale is unmatched, but it follows rail tunnel design rules, not highway standards. Trains allow for tight control of airflow, traffic spacing, and emergency response. Highway tunnels have to account for private vehicles, varying fuel loads, and unpredictable driver behavior, which changes every single part of the design and safety planning. Next, the Channel Tunnel running under the English Channel to connect the UK and France. Its biggest challenges came from water pressure and long undersea sections, not fractured mountain rock under constant seismic stress. Its geology was consistent, predictable chalk marl for most of the route. The Tian Shan route, by contrast, forced engineers to adapt to wildly changing conditions every few hundred meters. This is where the Tianshan-Shengli Tunnel stands apart from every other tunnel on the planet. In simple terms, some tunnels are longer, some are deeper, some took more years to build, but very few combine all of those extreme stresses at once. That's why engineers around the world don't describe this tunnel just as the longest in isolation. They describe it as one of the most demanding highway tunnels ever completed. And there's another key distinction that rarely gets mentioned. This tunnel was not built to connect two countries or serve global transit alone. It was built to bind a single region together to remove a natural barrier that shaped daily life, economics, and mobility for millions of people. It fits into a long-term pattern in how China approaches infrastructure, especially in regions where geography has historically limited development. For decades, China focused first on its eastern and coastal regions. Flat terrain, dense populations, and export-driven growth made returns on infrastructure investment fast and obvious. Western China followed later, not because it mattered less, but because building there costs more and delivers results more slowly. Xinjiang represents the hardest version of that challenge. It's vast. It's sparsely populated in many areas, and it's dominated by unforgiving deserts and mountains. From a short-term financial perspective, avoiding expensive projects like this would have been easier. But China took the opposite approach. Instead of asking whether the terrain is convenient to build on, planners increasingly ask whether the connection is necessary. This tunnel is the perfect reflection of that shift. But this logic extends far beyond Xinjiang. China has built long bridges across open sea, railways across permafrost, and highways through deserts where maintenance alone becomes a constant battle. The pattern is consistent. Remove bottlenecks first, even if the engineering looks excessive at the start. There's also a strategic layer to this project. Xinjiang sits at the core of China's overland routes towards Central Asia. Improving internal connections strengthens outbound ones. Roads that work reliably year-round inside China support trade corridors that extend far beyond its borders. Seen through that lens, the tunnel is not just a regional project. It's part of a larger effort to make geography less decisive in shaping economic and human outcome. Now, here is a question for you. Was this tunnel worth the staggering cost and unprecedented risk? Should more countries attempt ambitious projects like this, or is this level of engineering only possible under China's system? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.